Attack of the Clones may be one of the most hated on Star Wars movies, after these two anyway. And as I continue my rewatch of the Star Wars galaxy, I have to say, I just don't get it. If you're just tuning in and you missed it, I've already done a video on episode 1, The Phantom Menace. That's up on the channel and in the description if you're interested. But Attack of the Clones, why the hate? I do say not everything works splendidly in this movie, but there are many things that get put down despite me looking at these scenes and not really seeing anything that wrong with them. And yes, you've seen the thumbnail. One of those things, not the biggest thing, is Yoda jumping around with a lightsaber. So many people hate this, and I just don't understand why. But first, I have to talk about some other things before I get to Warrior Yoda. First of those things is Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor. I don't really feel the need to touch on this in great detail for why these two work great together, because thankfully the love for these two actors has grown significantly in recent years in the prequels. And in fact, just love for the prequels keeps growing, and I love that more people are loving these movies, but some definitely still hate them.
That's why I'm here.
I love every second that Hayden Christensen and Ewan are together, like they're dynamic. In fact, one of my biggest sadnesses about the prequels is that they actually spend a lot of time apart. The prequels have a very specific style to their dialogue and performances. That's no secret. It's very straight and serious, which I'd argue isn't a style only applied to the prequels, but it's been that way since the beginning for a lot of it. Albeit not every performance is phenomenal in the prequels. You know, that's true. That's just true. Sometimes, you know what? Maybe it can feel a bit too dry. But I feel like this is really only limited to certain lines or certain characters mainly. Whereas I feel in the prequels, a lot of performances actually do kind of have fun with that style. The more straight delivery of most scenes does actually let the fun moments really become noticeable. And speaking of fun moments, or very not fun moments depending on your opinion about this next thing, but why do so many people hate the droid factory sequence? It's upbeat and insanely energetic, and I don't get the dislike for this sequence as a whole. Not the greatest action scene in Star Wars, sure, but it still feels like people just having fun making a Star Wars movie. Alright, is it because of C-3PO and R2-D2 being inserted as jokes every now and then? I understand not liking that. But if I'm being honest with myself, and I mean completely 100% honest, the jokes that C-3PO makes in Attack of the Clones specifically are so obnoxious and so obvious that I laugh. I do. And I think it's the psychology of the dad joke. Being in a room with people, or just a person, or anyone, just being in a room with someone else and feeling that severe sense of them being completely and utterly unimpressed. As C-3PO says,
This is such a drag.
As R2-D2 drags his head, makes me unable to hold my laughter. Let's be clear, it's not that I think C-3PO's jokes are funny. They aren't. But it's the fact that they're so bad that the size of my fellow watchers just makes me cackle. And for that, I will never be upset. It's not good, but I will never hate it. But anyways, before I get to Yoda and why his lightsaber theatrics actually do make sense, in my Phantom Menace video, I talked a lot about how much I loved the political world of the Republic at this time. In fact, that was pretty much the whole video. And that is another thing that is great about Attack of the Clones. Phantom Menace had set up Palpatine's rise, and many of his plans had already been initiated. But now he needed to remain in power and let everything he started grow. Relationships fester, people break from the Republic. All of these things had merely just begun in Episode 1, but now here we are 10 years later. Everything is in motion, and we now see all of these pieces required to start this galactic war, the Clone Wars. I love following Obi-Wan on his mission to uncover what is going on with, Kamino, Cypher all that, Jango Fett. I love Palpatine still being the snake that he is, clearly pressing the right buttons to make sure the Jedi Council discovers the clones that he had purposefully kept hidden until now, while also working Dooku to prepare the separatist political leaders and armies and all that. And that's something that I love about this era, Palpatine manipulating both sides of the war to bring the entire Republic down in order to build a new one. And with all this political stuff going on, there's also Palpatine's project that he's been grooming ever since The Phantom Menace, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin is less interested in the political world, and his story is where we get personal, because that's what these movies are about, the fall of Anakin Skywalker. There are some fantastic moments in this film, most notably with much of the credit to John Williams. The brief moment that Anakin goes ballistic on the Tusken Raiders, that's just that's the best moment of the film, in my opinion anyway. Something that doesn't work though, which is crazy, is Anakin and Padme's romance. The straight and serious style and tone of these films isn't something that makes these movies bad, but it doesn't always lead to the best results, Anakin's moodiness is one thing, yes, but Padme never changing facial expression to question these very obvious red flags Anakin is constantly sending her, making it really, really creepy, doesn't exactly seem convincing.
You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams.
Okay, here we are, the moment we've all been waiting for, the reason why you probably clicked on this video, and perhaps the biggest place of hate this movie gets that I just don't get, and that is, of course, Yoda should not use a lightsaber. Yoda shouldn't even have a lightsaber. His fight scene is a complete misreading of his character. Why? Why is it misreading his character? Why is he not allowed to have a lightsaber? I mean, people say Yoda was a character who did not have one because he didn't believe in it. So giving him one in the Attack of the Clones misreads his character and puts his belief in something else that wasn't what it is in the originals. Why do people think that? Well, because Yoda talked about it. In a way, he talked about how being a soldier that uses peace and patience takes the real victories, in life and in battle.
Great warrior! Wars not make one great!
And this is a really powerful lesson that the hothead Luke needed to learn in these films. But let's look at that compared to Attack of the Clones. Two very different situations, two very different times. Why does this example that Yoda was setting for Luke mean that he never used a lightsaber? Because that would not understand what his character means. Looking at Attack of the Clones Yoda, this is a time when the Jedi were prospering but slowly realizing the tensions that were cracking the fibers of the Republic. Now, almost every Jedi had a lightsaber. Not only was it a weapon of a Jedi, but it symbolized their connection with the Force. Yes, with the color too, that's an obvious one, but mainly the Kyber crystal itself. The crystal was a piece of the Jedi's personal connection and presence with the Force. A lightsaber wasn't just a tool of violence, if needed, but a spiritual ritual for their Jedi owners. But even as a weapon, it's not meant to inflict harm upon people, but to protect people. Why does Yoda saying war does not make one great mean that he shouldn't use a lightsaber? When a saber is about a spiritual connection as much as it is a means to protect others. And let's just look at these two situations that Yoda was in each moment. Attack of the Clones, a time when the Jedi have discovered the Sith's return and can't turn a blind eye to it. Unable to discover the remaining Sith's identity only heightens their search. Now they discover the Sith was one of their own, 10 years later, Dooku, who is seemingly leading an army of forces against the Republic, the democracy that the Jedi align themselves with. Alright, this is pretty delicate stuff. I'm like, it's not like, happy-go-lucky, like la la la, let's just talk about everything, it's great. Alright? Times are not great. Now the scene itself. Yoda walks up to discover Dooku in the process of killing two of the Jedi, Anakin and Obi-Wan. If Yoda didn't pull up, that's it, roll credits. Those two are dead. Now, reminder, we're mad because Yoda said war does not make one great. In Attack of the Clones, Yoda doesn't even strike first in this. He approaches, and Dooku tries to kill Yoda several times, and Yoda doesn't attack Dooku. In fact, Yoda doesn't even draw his lightsaber first. He doesn't initiate the fight. Dooku does. Yoda just defends himself in this moment. Dooku is incredibly skilled with a lightsaber. Yoda doesn't beat Dooku with a lightsaber. If Yoda didn't have a lightsaber in that fight and was just jumping around, Dooku would have just smacked him out of the air, like it's done. Alright, next. War does not make one great. Again, I remind you, Yoda doesn't even prioritize this war with Dooku. Dooku is able to easily escape because Yoda immediately puts his saber away and abandons this fight with Dooku in order to protect Anakin and Obi-Wan. And looking at Yoda in the originals, he wasn't even saying Luke should never fight to protect his friends. Yoda was training Luke in order for Luke to become calmer and more confident in his connection with the Force so that he could fight, so that he could defeat the Sith. Not every situation can be resolved through civil dialogue and philosophical debate, and Yoda realizes that. As wise as he is, of course he would realize that. This is also Yoda at the end of his days reflecting on his own life alone for a number of years and ready to teach Luke what's most important. But yeah, those are my quick thoughts after my rewatch of Attack of the Clones. Again, if you haven't seen it, my Phantom Menace video is out as well, and there might be a Clone Wars video in the near future. We'll see. Stay tuned for that. As always, I've been Shin Glassman, and I'll see you in the next one.